Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.
I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. After graduating from Jesuit High School, Georgetown University, and UNO's creative writing program, my guest today painted houses for a living while chasing his dream of becoming a professional songwriter. He's now co-written #1 singles for Jason Aldean, Brantley Gilbert, and Gabby Barrett. His songs have also been recorded by Luke Bryan, Kelly Clarkson, Tim McGraw, Keith Urban, Trisha Yearwood, and his fellow Jesuit grad, Harry Connick Jr. Here to talk about writing songs for a living is Jim McCormick. Jim, thank you for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Thank you.
So, you haven't painted houses for a long time, but would you say you've, at this point, painted more houses or written more songs?
Definitely written more songs.
How many songs have you written?
I write about 100 to 150 songs a year in Nashville, and I've been up there about 25 years. So, over 2,000, well over 2,000 songs. Absolutely. Well
over 2,000 songs. And yes, you split your time between New Orleans and Nashville. You go up there half the week and you write. Of those 2,500 songs that you've written, how many have been recorded, would you guesstimate?
200, maybe.
Which is a pretty good, 10%, a little less than 10%?
Pretty good, or less than that. Yeah, most of what I write and most of what professional writers write gets rejected and doesn't go on to get recorded, never sees the light of day, which is a ridiculous sort of prospect, right? Hell of a way to make a living, let me tell you.
Well, that's what I say. Yeah, I mean, you talk about it. People who are actors. You have to get used to rejection. You don't get most of the parts you try out for. Right. And as a songwriter, the vast majority of the songs you write, like you said, will never see the light of day.
That's right. That's part of the process. But the ones that do can go on to extraordinary popularity and provide for a living. It's a strange, very strange business. The odds are ridiculous. But we don't start out doing it for the odds. We start out doing it, most of us, because we love the craft of songwriting.
So the logistics of it, I think a lot of people have an impression that songwriting is all about sitting around and waiting for inspiration to strike as you're on the mountain overlooking the fields or something. But that's not the case. When you're a professional songwriter, it is a process. Why don't you describe a little bit of what that process actually is? It's
very much a process, and I try to treat it like a process, like a craft, almost like cabinet making, where I'm just going into my job every day. I'm always booked by my team in Nashville, and those teams have changed over the years, but it's writing by appointment with other professional, or as I like to say, briefcase songwriters who go in the morning, make a pot of coffee. How's the wife and kids? What's going on? All right, what do you got? And what do you got is kind of like time to play the title game. Who's got a great idea in the room? And really, I think it's important not to even start until everybody in the room is very excited about that idea, that title, whatever it is. Or maybe it's a musical riff of some kind. So it just kind of, and we all, we're all immersed in country music, in country radio, so we kind of know what the market is looking for. Mm-hmm. We've internalized that enough to kind of know how to guide the song. But really, there's nothing better than finding an idea that really lights the room on fire and everybody's ready to go. And then you just spend however long it takes to write the song in the room. 5 hours, I've spent 11 hours in a room. And there's no correlation to the amount of time you spend on the song necessarily and the quality of the song or the success that the song will have. And then it's, scrub, rinse, repeat. Go home, go to sleep, get up the next day, exercise, good breakfast, do it again. Do it again, In fact, that was my dad's advice to me when I called him. We had our first #1 song, and I called him and I said, "Dad, I think we're going #1 this week at country radio." Long pause. Good, do it again. But that's it. It's really just, and I think one of the greatest gifts in my life has been the sort of sustained love of this craft. 25 years in, I still love getting out of bed in the morning and going to write a song as much as I did in the first 5 years of doing this thing.
Well, and that's the key, because if it became just a job for you, or drudgery, I mean, there is a spark of creativity that has to be there. So
Absolutely.
if you're just punching numbers, it's hard to find that spark.
Yeah, no, I think I say that sort of cabinet making analogy more for my own sanity. It's a great thrill, and I love the craft, and I love the sort of vocation that I belong to. You know, the history of songwriting is rich with brilliant minds and brilliant songs out there, and I'm very proud to be a part of it, and to study those things, and to look at them and see how I might try to compete with all the great songs that have been written.
Your most recent #1 single was Gabby Barrett's "The Good Ones." Now, that came out in 2021. That was an interesting process because at the time, she was relatively unknown. She'd been on American Idol, I think, and you were going to go, you had a songwriting session scheduled with a couple of other writers, and you got a call, right, from a publisher saying, hey, can this woman, Gabby Barrett, come in and write with you guys, right?
That's it, that's it. She was managed by Red Light, which is a great management company. Corin Capshaw, who handled Dave Matthews from the very beginning. And so we knew she had a good team around her. She didn't have a record deal yet, and I was walking out of BMG where I was writing at the time, and Rakaya Marshall, who was a publisher there, it was like 6:30, she was working late, and she's like, hey, Jim, I just got a call from Red Light, and they wonder if this girl who was a third place, you know, on American Idol, if she could jump in with you and Emily and Zach tomorrow. And I was a little crusty. I'd been working all day, and I'm like, I don't know, should she? Like, and you know, I mean, I look back on it now, it's like I almost missed that. And she's like, I think it'd be a good idea. And I said, well, then let's do it, you know? So we all showed up at Zach's home where his studio was, and you know, Gabby was lovely, and she was, I think, 18 at the time, and Emily is much younger, and she had an idea for a song called "The Good Ones," and Gabby was explicit about wanting to write something about her then boyfriend, now husband, that day, and so.
So she had that was her intention, was to write about
her boyfriend.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was what she brought to the table.
That's right. As well as her amazing voice and her talents. And Emily had this idea, and
this is Emily
Landis.
Emily Landis, songwriter,
a brilliant songwriter and a great friend. And I didn't remember this. I didn't remember this from the day, but when we went to the CMA Awards, the song was nominated for Song of the Year by the
Country Music Association.
Country Music Association. And I got up to go to the restroom, and I brought my little sister to the awards with me. And later that night, Erin, my sister, told me that Emily turned to her and said, listen, you need to know what happened when we were writing this song. I said "The Good Ones," and your brother just spit out the chorus. And my sister told me that later, and I was like, I have no recollection of that, you know.
Writing the chorus?
Yeah, you know, the love you like he should one, the kind you find when you don't even look one, blah, 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 just kind of like, and so, you know, this is the kind of, parenthetically, this is the kind of flow state that you get in writing a song sometimes, where you don't even realize what's happening. And it's a great high, you know, there's no feeling like it to be creating like that in the moment. Anyway, we wrote the song, and it felt like we did our job. It felt like we wrote a great song. I especially remember at the end of the day, Gabby had been singing kind of in head voice for most of the day while we were writing the song.
Just not putting her gut into it, kind of thing. Yeah.
And Zach's a great producer, and he was building out the track while we were writing, and at the end, she stood up to sing the demo. And the room couldn't have been bigger than the table right here. We were all on top of each other, and I swear I thought the second coming of Miley Cyrus had like walked into the room. The room was vibrating with this amazing, unique voice, and I was like, I liked our chances after that. I was like, okay, let's see. And then shortly afterwards, she got a deal at Warner Brothers, Nashville, and she had this massive hit called "I Hope," which was kind of a crossover, and so we watched her star rising. We knew we had a song in the pile. And when Warner called and said, we're going to make "The Good Ones" the next single, I knew we had a great tailwind because she had had this huge success with that other song. And it was a 3-week #1, I think. It was a great ride.
That's a good call to get, saying we're going to make your song the new single.
It's a good call to get. It really, really is. It's a call we all want. Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, my guest today is songwriter Jim McCormick. And again, that song was voted Best Country Song at the American Music Awards?
At the American Music Awards, right.
So I mean, and she performed it on the CMAs, I think, right?
Yes.
You watched the show from home, the CMAs?
Well, we were there. We were there for real.
Okay.
But then when I wanted to remember, I didn't want to be like the groom at the reception who couldn't remember anything. So I think I had one drink the whole night. When we went home, I popped a bottle of bourbon and watched the whole thing again. My sister was like, "You're crazy. We just lived through this thing." I was like, "I gotta watch it again." So I watched it. It was a kick to watch it again.
Seeing her sing your words on that national broadcast.
It was amazing.
That's a cool feeling.
Yeah.
You arrived in Nashville right around the same time as an unknown singer-songwriter named Luke Bryan.
I did.
And you guys met pretty early on,
We
right?
met, I think, our first week in town, both of us.
Literally, first week in town for both of you guys.
Yeah. I may be off on this by one or two people, but I think we were each other's first writing session in Nashville when we got there. I still remember when we wrote the first song we did. We got a little NSAI, the Nashville Songwriters Association back then, and they probably still do, would rent out rooms, not even rent, just gift rooms to would-be songwriters to write a song. And we booked a room at NSAI. And if I thought the studio with Gabby was small, this was like half the table size. Me and Luke on top of each other. And we wrote this awful song that I still have the cassette tape of, and I threaten him with it now and then, you know, just to expose. But yeah, it was early on, and who knew what that career would be, and what a great friend he's been. He's taught me an awful lot about the business as he's gone through all the stages of his career. He has not been shy about sharing it with me, and I've learned a lot from him.
Well, he's recorded, what, half dozen of your songs at least?
A bunch.
Records, something
bunch,
like that?
Yep.
Let's see, some of the titles: Cold Beer Drinker, Sorority Girl, Good Looking Girl, Reroading Trucks. Those sound like country songs.
Thank you. He's a country boy. You know, I grew up in New Orleans, so it's like, you know, but if you switch out the levee for the cornfield and the time saver for the quick stop, and you know, I don't know, Dixie beer for Pabst Blue Ribbon, you know, you kind of have the same thing.
Right. You can transfer, you know, the swamp for the creek or something like that.
Right.
You know, the oak trees for the pine trees of Georgia. You know, you can do it. Has being from New Orleans been either an advantage or disadvantage of being up there now?
Great question. I've often thought about it. I think from the very beginning, it's a great advantage because you grew up with a rich musical sort of heritage and gumbo that you're immersed in here, almost unconsciously, right? Then when I went to Nashville, it was a little bit of a liability. You know, I sang behind the beat, so I didn't do many of our demos. And back then, country was very on the one, right? It didn't have the R&B influence in it like it does today. I think that's kind of it. You know, I think that now it's a much greater advantage than it was when I arrived 25 years ago. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, it's a great education unconsciously to be in New Orleans. Musical education, you know, it's just wonderful, all the things. And you mentioned Harry Connick Jr. Going to school with Harry, he'd play these brown bag concerts at lunchtime.
At Jesuit?
Yeah, and bringing guys like Nicholas Payton or Brian Blade, and it was just, you knew that you were around something very special.
It's kind of funny that all those years later, he ended up recording one of your songs.
It's real funny. I think his producer, Tracy Freeman, told me that I sent it to Tracy, and Tracy sent it to Harry and said, I think this is a really great song. I think you might like it. And Harry was like, wait, this guy went to Jesuit High School? He's like, this is too close to even work. This is never going to work. I'll listen to it, but I don't think this is going to work.
And it was I Do Like We Do, right?
Yes.
Which
yes.
Came out a few years ago. So yeah, it worked out. I mean,
it worked.
It had a country feel initially, but Harry recast it in his own
to his credit. And I sent the song because it was one of the lyrics that I'm most proud of that I've ever written, and I just knew it was bulletproof. I knew it was so strong. He likes these American songbook kind of songs, right? These Johnny Mercer and Cole Porter and all these kind of things. And I was like, man, this thing is really sturdy. And if he can see through the countryness of the demo, I think he'll see a great song. And I mean, he's brilliant. He saw what I wanted him to see, what I hoped he would see, and then he took it even further and really put his fingerprints on it. Really,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is the sign of a good song, that it's malleable in
That's
a sense that somebody can take it and make it their own.
Absolutely.
It's got the good bones,
Absolutely.
if you will. So,
Yeah.
now obviously you can't write autobiographically, obviously. I mean, I'm thinking, Trisha Yearwood's Cowboys Are My Weakness, which you did. That was not an autobiographical song on your part.
Not autobiographical.
So you have to, when you're working with an artist specifically, you have to find their voice, I guess. You have to kind of to tailor what you do to their voice. Is that easier with certain artists than others, or is that something that at this point in time you can okay, this is their voice, I know what I'm going to say here?
I think, it's a practice, right? And the more you do it, the better you get. And I like to kind of think of myself as the writer. I'm trying to get inside of the rhetorical situation of whatever it is we're writing about, whether it's a conflict between a couple, or you want to praise somebody, or you're missing somebody, or you're whatever the deal is. I think if you've lived and you've felt and you've paid attention, you can kind of transport yourself into these different scenarios. And I mean, that's what a writer does, right? And then kind of give voice to it, articulate it with language that really paints the picture for the listener so that they can be transported into it also, kind of thing.
Right, that's the idea, is to bring them in.
Absolutely.
You want people to invest in that song.
Absolutely. You want them to feel like, that's my song.
Right, exactly. First the artist has to feel it, and then hopefully if it's going right, then the listener does as well.
Right.
Your first #1 song was the Brantley Gilbert song, You Don't Know Her Like I Do.
Yes.
Tell me about the experience of when that song first went to #1 for you. Was it
big deal? I'd never had a #1, so I really didn't know how this worked. I thought maybe somebody comes in the middle of the night and rings your doorbell and gives you an envelope and like you're in, kid. It's like, or there's a secret handshake or something like that. Honestly, when it happened, and I realized it was happening, it was a great light went off in my head that like, oh, it's possible from writing something to achieve a #1. Like, it's not a secret handshake. It's not a secret cabal making these decisions over here. Brantley and I simply wrote that song, and it slowly made its way onto a record, onto radio, and up the charts. And it gave me a sense of possibility that I don't think I really had beforehand. That like every day could be $1 million day. You've got to go in and just do your best, and then leave it alone, and then do it again tomorrow, and do it again tomorrow. That day that Brantley and I wrote felt like every other day when I'd do my best. So there's so many things out of your control, right? Like the only thing I can control is like what we're doing in the room that day, and I really try to give that my all and create the very best song we can create that day. Because after that, it's like a long list of miracles that have to happen, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the artist's wife has to like it, the manager has to like it, the record executive, right? Then radio promotion has to like it, then radio has to like it, then the audience has to, I mean, it's just like, it's way out of your control. No point in thinking about it.
Right, you let it go.
Right,
Let it go.
Let it go.
If you're just tuning in, my guest today is songwriter Jim McCormick. Beyond talent, what are the qualities that make a good songwriter? Like, what allows someone to have a career as long as you've had?
A little foolishness.
Okay.
Probably,
Okay.
a little willful blindedness to the odds helps a lot. A supportive group of friends or family, persistence, work ethic, and I think reading. I think one of my secret weapons, and I think every songwriter out there has a great love of language that they just nurture somehow. And usually it's through reading. Could be movies, could be magazines or whatever. But like reading has been such a source of strength for me as a writer to constantly renew my interest and love of language.
Well, and you've got to be, a professional as well. You got to show up on time for those appointments.
Absolutely, goes without saying. Yeah,
goes without saying.
That's right. Yeah. All the normal things of any other business apply here, and then some. But I think that doggedness and persistence and work ethic and optimism. I think it's real easy. A friend of mine says, you got obstacles and you got goals, and you can focus on the obstacles all day long. But if you choose to focus only on the goals, it gives you a sort of, okay, whatever. Those are the obstacles. Who cares? This is the goal. Let's just keep going.
Just keep hammering away.
Yeah.
Your own personal journey. You went to Georgetown as a business major or in the business school, right?
Yeah, I took one poetry workshop and switched to English real fast.
So that poetry workshop literally set you on the course to be a songwriter.
It did, absolutely. I was already writing songs in high school. I had a band with some guys, Ed Conway and Mark Funty and Bill Rochelle and Art Lemon, and we had a blast. I mean, we were 15 years old. Back then you could drive at 15, and we had the Tuesday night residency at what was then Jed's, later Muddy Waters, every Tuesday night, sophomore, junior, senior year of high school. And that's kind of where I learned to stand on stage with guys and adjust volumes and not get into a fist fight, and but yeah, that's kind of where it was bubbling, where it was starting, But my love of literature, I have to say, it was probably even back at Jesuit High School. I was the poetry editor of the literary magazine at Jesuit. So it was, I don't know how all that came. That just kind of organically developed in me. I never dreamed that I would be a professional songwriter.
What was it that made you think that goal was achievable? What tipped you towards like, all right, this is what I want to pursue?
Well, in my 20s, I had a rock band. We had a lot of fun. We toured around the Southeast, and we wrote a lot of songs.
The Benjamin,
right?
yep.
And And it was during that time, I was kind of the de facto manager and was kind of like, really like studying what it would take to get a record deal. Where's the money flow? How does this whole thing really work as a business kind of thing? And in doing that, I began to see clearly that the money really is around the copyright. The ownership of the asset, the song, is where it's at. You can go play gigs for a lot of money, but that's a one-time payment, and then it's done. You can sell merch, that's a one-time payment. But if you get a song, a hit song, that song kind of gets out there, and it's like the longer it's played, it just generates cash flow. So I saw this while we were a band, and it just kind of went in the back of my head. And then when the band blew up in a bad way, and went away, I kind of, I was a little bit at sea. I didn't know what I was going to do. I played around solo for a little bit, and I had met a couple of songwriters, Pat McLaughlin and Chris Bergsness in Nashville, who had always said, man, come on up and check this out if you think you'd ever want to make a go of it. They had heard my lyrics with the Bingemen, and I knew it was a viable sort of avenue to make a living. And I was coming up on 30. This is the time when things start to come clear.
Into focus.
Right, come into focus a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'll go give it a shot. I'll go check it out, And I went up there for a weekend. I was an editor at a trade magazine here, and I took a long weekend. I went up there, and I fell in love with it. I was like, oh, there's a job called songwriter? Like, I'm getting this job. And I was like a horse going back to the stables. I was like, oh no, I'm going to get this job. And that's when I got fired as the editor of the magazine and started painting houses because I could kind of do that, and I'd do that for 2 weeks in New Orleans, and I'd go up to Nashville and sleep on my buddy's couch for 2 weeks and write songs, 3 or 4 songs a day with anybody and everybody. That's when the Luke Bryan thing happened. And so many other relationships were forged back then. I look back at it, and it's like, it's without a doubt one of the happiest periods of my life. I had nothing, and I saw this dream. I was like a kid outside the candy store before they let me in, and I was like, I cannot wait to get in there, and I just remember I was like a fool for it, and I think there were a lot of kind of forces at work in me that had been developing for years, obviously, right? A love of poetry, a love of the music stuff, and Nashville was just teeming with talent, with great writers, and it was like these people they were the same as me. They'd gotten in a lifeboat and rowed out from their little safe harbor to this town, and we were like, I don't really know how to do this thing, but let's try it. And man, we had a blast. We wrote horrible, horrible, horrible songs for years and years. But you would go to the Longhorn Saloon. I just saw Earl Bud Lee at the Pensacola Songwriters Festival, and I went up to him and told him, because I remember it like yesterday, and I said, Earl, Earl wrote Friends in Low Places.
For Garth Brooks.
A little hit for Garth.
A little hit for Garth, yes. Yes.
And I told Earl, we were standing outside the Hilton Hotel, and I said, buddy, I said, you need to know that when I got to Nashville 25 years ago, we would go to lunch at the Longhorn just to see you and Harlan Howard sitting at the bar. And they were sitting at the bar having a drink at lunchtime. But that's the kind of town that it was, Harlan Howard, the legendary great songwriter.
Right.
And it was this place where I was like, oh my God, this is for real? And back then, we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have these colleges of music business. So it was kind of like this thing that you had to go to see it.
Right.
IRL, right? It's
right, in real life, yeah.
And it was just amazing, man. I remember, and I'd come home and I'd paint houses and hang sheetrock so happily. I was like, no problem, and friends would be calling me. I'd be up on a ladder painting. They'd call, what about this lyric instead? I'm like, yes, I love it. That's great, and I mean, it was like, I had nothing to lose, and it was a great time.
You were going for it.
Yeah.
You were just going for it. We've only got a couple minutes left. Obviously, the business of songwriting has changed with the music industry itself. People don't sell nearly as many records. I mean, I think if you'd had 3 #1 songs in the 70s, we'd be doing this interview from your Learjet.
Thank you.
So it has changed a lot, but it is still possible to make a living. I mean, you as a signed to a publishing company, you get paid a salary every week. You write the songs.
Right.
So it's changed, but it's still possible to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the reason for that is because great songs still kind of win. There's a lot of stuff that's not great, but really great songs, people are looking hard to find great songs. So it's the work, right? It's really, I think every artist out there, I think the most important business decision they make is what songs do I put out? What songs do I record? Because from that follows the tour, the branding, the imagery, all of it, right? And NSAI has this saying, it all begins with a song. And it really does all begin with a song. I don't think the music industry can go too far without new songs.
Right, that's where it starts.
Right.
That's where it all starts. As we wrap up, you've actually put out several albums of your own. You did a couple of great records here in town with the Wright brothers.
Thank you.
Which was yourself, the late Spencer Boren, Alex McMurray, and Paul Sanchez. All fine songwriters.
Great guys.
In and of themselves. Do you still like keeping your finger in the performing pool yourself as an artist? I mean, you make your living writing songs for other people, but you still like to get up there on stage a little bit?
A little bit. It's an itch that's been well scratched over my lifetime, but and having a rock band will do that to you. But the truth is, I had gotten far away from the sort of thingness of performing music, of playing, and the facticity of it, as a friend of mine likes to say. And so I was watching something late at night, and I wanted to hear The Road Goes On Forever. I found something that was like the Highwaymen doing the song. I think it was The Road Goes On Forever. And I was like, the Highwaymen, and this crazy idea occurred to me that, like, man, why couldn't we do this with like the New Orleans guys that I love so much, And I called Paul and Alex and Spencer, and Threadhead got behind it, and we were off to the races. And it was so much fun to be like sit in a room with guys and write songs fast and dirty, and just like, and go record them, and then get on stage and have to negotiate the space and the thing and all, and it's like go to the gig. And I had missed that for a long time. It had been a long time since I had that, and so it was a wonderful chapter. It was a real privilege to work with all three of those guys, and I'm very proud of the work. Very proud of the work.
And what a great legacy for Spencer too, to have those records and stuff there.
Thank you.
Well, Jim, this has been a pleasure. I would encourage everyone, when you buy a country album, and you should buy a country album, scan the credits on the songwriters to see who's writing those songs. You may see Jim McCormick's name up there.
Thanks, bro.
So continued success.
Appreciate it.
I hope you have more number ones in your future down the road.
This is our business plan.
All right, that once again was Jim McCormick. I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. I'll see you next time on Let's Talk.
Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.